What's going on, gang? It's Spud Rifle here again with another Flak Cannon Gaming video on Crossout. Today we're going to talk about 5 lessons in proper vehicle building in this game, and we're going to get started actually by doing a bit of a random. So we're going to look at how the game would auto assemble something, and then we're going to destroy that. So yeah. Plenty to pick apart here, which is absolutely awful. I probably should have specified a higher power score actually, so we'll try again in a second, but let's just start with this, shall we? This one here is atrocious for the reasons that it's put some reasonable guns, so the Prometheus and the Imp, on some less than favourable parts with durability of 8. So anything hits that, like a cat sneezing on it for example, and that gun is a goner. So that's kind of one of the lessons we're going to go through. Let's see what else we can pick apart from this before we actually step into lessons 1 to 5 in more detail. So at the back here we've got some running boards, they're fine. A bit of a hollow space, and 1 breeze is the only thing they put in there, so that's probably not utilising this build all that well. I don't even know if the Prometheus benefits from the breeze, so that's non-synergetic. They put a sledgehammer, an energy weapon and a machine gun together. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if that would work very well. And they put it on the bear cabin with some atrocious paint. Right, now that looks a little bit better. The only other than the back gun, which I think I'd recommend changing. I like the armour of this one, not the look of it. It looks quite like a quilted pillow, but I think the ram at the front is very good, so anything comes straight at this at speed, it's flying off into the sun, so that's decent. It's using omnis and arrays, so it's not actually gonna move very well, so that's not great. The horizon visor, I mean, I only really use that in PvE and very specialist modes. I think the firing angles of this whirlwind might be impeded slightly by this tank side part, so it certainly won't be able to look down, but I think it might struggle even at a horizontal line. And of course the defender at the back pointing at its own fucking gun is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. So let's pick it apart a little bit and look at what else they put in there. So firstly, they've used some APC roof parts, which are one of the best armor parts in the game, so that's better. They've got a cheetah engine, and they've got a chill, and they've got the gas gen in there as well, so they've done well to do that. So let's just put that back on, because I don't really feel like they haven't used all the parts. They've got 4 energy left to spend, and some kind of bear cabin fetish, obviously, because they can't seem to get away from that one. To build something 6,313 with only the 1 operable gun and 4 wasted energy, it feels like a poor show. So we've established then that the computer can't really do a job of building for you, so you're going to have to learn how to build properly yourself. And this is going to be our section on 5 of our best tips for building properly in Crossout. So starting off with number 1, and I'm just going to assemble my cannon build here to demonstrate this. But the first lesson is that this game has got nothing to do with basic building principles. It's not Lego, and tessellation does not strengthen your build. What do I mean by this? Well, if I were to just randomly put some parts on here, what you might be conscious of and what might be ingrained in you is that a strong kind of structural integrity is built around tessellation. So brickwork on houses, obviously Lego brickwork as well, as I just mentioned, it always seems to do this overlap across joins. It strengthens the vertical and horizontal tension between components. Now that is not the case in Crossout, because all you're really doing is testing the durability of any one given part, and the durability here is 8, and of this part it's 7, and all that really says is that you can have exactly the same kind of coverage, but kind of just vertically placed parts, and it doesn't really make a difference. Now there is one exception here which we do want to talk about in more detail, and that is that the more connection points you have with a durable part, the more resilience your vehicle is going to have, especially when it comes to splash damage. So when I'm talking things like rockets, cannon shells, or even rams, so anything that charges into you with that horrible tusk cabin, anything like that which would normally hit the side of your vehicle here is likely to take out kind of all of these parts at once. So having more connection points that kind of span the vehicle and kind of go deeper. If I were to connect this then to the chassis as well, so let's do that. With one of those and then another one of these. I mean, this is terrible design, but essentially because that's now connected to 3 parts, if this was to get impacted and we lose this, maybe this, maybe this would stay in contact with something else and would remain part of your vehicle. So the armor is resilient to splash damage more the more connection points you have. So to talk about a better example of this then, with a little bit more design involved, let's think if we were to get shot from this angle. So if I'm in a PvE or even a PvP and I'm getting cannon fire or rocket fire against the side of my vehicle, aiming for my cabin more likely, but sometimes aiming for my gun, then I might first absorb some damage in this space, and then maybe that part goes as well, and eventually maybe the front end of this goes, but I've still got some armor around this weapon, and even this part that I've got the weapon residing on is connected by more than just that first part which we just destroyed there. So this shield, the APC roof part, is not integral to us having the gun in action. So that's kind of lesson number 1 then. It's not Lego. Tessellation gets you nowhere. Layering joins doesn't do what you think it's going to do, and it's always better to just have more connection points. Now, whilst we're on that topic actually, just a quick one because this is relatively recent news. You'll be very familiar, I'm sure by now, that there has been a meta, certainly in the last season, of what I've been calling ramming. And this particular unit, this little tusk cabin here, let's have a look at him. He has been rife in probably power scores 5,000 to 8,000, and you'll have been rammed into by this boy because for every 80 meters that he covers, he does a collision damage which stacks by 40% up to 5 times. So you'll see this with booster upon booster upon booster, and a meta of just kind of charging into people. But that has been nerfed. Bumper parts and even movement parts like the legs that were on my spider that we just talked about will now have far more resilience against these charges. So you'll see probably less of the tusk in the future, although they are still out there and they still can insta-kill you. So it has happened to me 2 or 3 times this season as well, but it was certainly last season a little bit OP. So they've nerfed that with more resilience now. On to point number 2 then, and what we're going to talk about next is how you can strike the balance between tankiness, speed, and your power score. So winning in Crossout, as we've already mentioned in our other videos on the channel, is all about being best in class. Now I'm going to assemble this vehicle now because I think it is an example of being best in class. It's only a 7,360 power score vehicle, but it has 3 Auroras, I think 2 of which are upgraded. Or just 1 of which is upgraded, and the photon cabin as well, which is upgraded in itself, and its tankiness is basically using just those kind of truck doors, so not even going to the APC parts really, but it's got really good gun protection. So the Auroras are already quite a durable weapon, but the hell pipes kind of mask them. The other pipes towards the back and the truck doors are doing a job, and overall it's utilizing space really well, keeping its tonnage down, and because of that I've been able to put the co-driver of Hertz in, which does a little bit more for my energy builds. Let me bring my melee build out to talk about that. So this is Melanie, who has the typical kind of Mauler, Lacerator, Cerberus frontage, and a lot of good components at the back as well. The Aegis Prime, which I'm not 100% convinced on yet, I've put in instead of a second Tormentor, but there's a Tormentor and an engine in there and an Apollo for generator 2. But you can see by looking at the kind of the box on the top right here, I've managed to hit that top speed of 105 kilometers per hour, which is very important for a melee build because you do want to be able to chase people down. The double wheels are helping me out a lot there actually, and Grizzly of course in the co-driver's cabin. The total parts I only managed to get to 62. I'm now in that kind of orange mass limit, and you can see the red creeping in on my tonnage and acceleration bars, so any more additional parts here would be slowing me up, and that's very important not to do. So I've got a good amount of tanking at the front with these kind of extra hard parts, the hard modules, but at the back I'm quite exposed, and this is where the balance is being struck. So I've only got minivan sideboards guarding all my important parts at the back, but I'm a very kind of front focused vehicle here, so most of my enemies I would expect to see me kind of coming at this angle, so they'll be shooting kind of my legs. These parts are very durable anyway, and the cabin of course to try and kill me. The next tip though, so number 3, is going to be talking about your firing angles. So we saw it a little bit in the start of this video, where the computer had automatically built us some pretty shoddy builds where they were looking at shooting basically their own guns. I'm now going to show you a few where I've got a couple of questionable firing arcs. So this is a trigger build that I'm trying to work on, which looks a bit like a three-eyed alien actually, but we've got a bit of a hindrance at kind of direct left, and maybe with this back trigger as well, kind of near front of the vehicle. So if I'm this gun here and someone's right in front of me, I'm shooting one of my own triggers and therefore not being able to maximize that firing arc. The big lesson here is that you want a little bit of differentiation in terms of height, but also placement. So what would be ideal, now I put these two triggers on an averter here in the middle. The averter, if you don't know, is a very important module, defense module that increases the resistance of anything it's touching for up to 30%. Now what I'd be tempted to do is to bring this one forward so it's still touching the averter, but if I could bring that one back as well, what I could do by doing this, although I think it probably hinders this one again, so I'll probably move that one there. So just by having that slightly offset and on asymmetrical, if you will, approach, if you were to focus on driving, in fact I'll show you. So if you were to focus on driving at this angle, you'd be able to maintain kind of that perfect crosshair. You can see the crosshair just flickering from time to time as I go past things, and as soon as I look down, the crosshairs are all over the shop. But what I mean is yeah, if you can kind of force an angle that works for you, and yeah, if you are a kind of a speed demon and you're keen on moving as you attack, which is always probably a good way of defending as well, you can kind of do this. You can see not all of my triggers are shooting there, so I've really got to focus on trying to shoot them at the front angles. I don't think right is as good either. So it's not this is not a perfect build by any stretch, so don't take this as a blueprint. I'm still trying to work on what's best for triggers, but you can see I'm failing to fire all my triggers at once on a few occasions here, and it's because the firing arc is impeded. So work to be done in the garage there. Next up then, we're going to be talking about smarter weapon joinery. So again, this one was exhibited in our earlier part of the video where we watched the computer put together some terrible designs, but the biggest lesson I could say I've learnt playing this game, and now at level 30 or 30 plus 6 prestiges or something, it's about what you're attaching your guns to. So if I look at let's have a look at the imp here. So the imp is it's built around this central imp machine gun with two MG13 equalizers on the flanks. And the important thing to note here is that again I'm using the imp on an averter, but also touching the cabin, so it's got multiple touch points. We've got the equalizers on the gun mounts, which are the only things I think that I would accept putting guns on other than the cabin itself, or an averter. Essentially, the gun mounts are, they say they've got 38 durability, but that little bullet sign with a 90% under the features means that it's got 90% bullet pass through. Now what that means is anything shooting this, certainly with bullets rather than rockets for example, is going to pass through 9 out of 10 shots. So if someone is shooting me with a machine gun and trying to take out the part that my gun is on, they're going to actually have to do 380 damage, not 38 damage, in order to take that out. And even so, we've again reverted back to having lots and lots of touch points for this gun mount to be attached to. So I'm getting, say I'm getting shot from the front and I lose that bit, that bit, that bit, that bit, and maybe all of this side stuff as well, maybe then eventually that. We've still got the pipes underneath holding it on. It's still attached to the cabin, which is obviously my strongest part, and yeah, it's got bits at the back as well, so plenty to hold this gun mount steady and to protect it from kind of shrapnel and splash damage as I try to keep my guns on my vehicle. The important thing here is to not build gun mounts in a bad way. So you might be tempted to kind of use things like buggy floors to get you some different kind of levels of elevation. Yeah, let's just mimic that. So if you wanted a really high up gun, you might be tempted to do something like this, and actually, as we were saying earlier in the video, all it takes is this part to go. So this 8 durability small buggy floor, if that were to go, then all of a sudden your gun's disappeared and you're up a certain creek without a paddle. Last tip of the day then, and it's all about synergy. So the more you play this game, the better you will become at understanding what works well together, what parts are complementary, and we're not just talking about cabins and guns, but also types of weapon and types of movement parts, and of course all those modules as well. So my recommendation here is to, well, follow this channel, because we'll always talk about what's working well together, and we'll have another video on the best combinations we've discovered so far. But going back to this this vehicle here, the no engine Spidey, let's just go into exactly why this works so well. So the Auroras, and 3 of them, they heat up parts when they're shooting, and they receive up to 100% more damage depending on the amount of accumulated heat. Now, where this works well is obviously with a photon cabin, where weapons that deal energy damage and that are mounted on a car will deal 30% more damage to heated parts. Plus this has been upgraded, so it gives me a little bit more durability, as mentioned, and then last but not least, adding that co-pilot of Hertz in, so reading what Hertz does. Charges when the armoured vehicle moves at a speed of 80% of its maximum speed, so that would be 40 km/h for my vehicle. Dealing energy damage after a full charge activates the talent. Increases energy damage weapon to cabins, hardware, weapons and movement parts by 30% for 4 seconds. So the effect is that I am stacking energy damage upon energy damage upon energy damage, and that sort of synergy can give you the edge in a 1v1. But as I said, it's not just about kind of those special effects that kind of you'll see in the cabins. So I would recommend reading up on all the small print of each cabin, because that's where you're going to work out where your best synergy is going to come from. But there's more to it than that. So going back to my cannon build that I showed you earlier, and the Omni wheels, you can see that this cannon, and to some extent the cannon above it, are protected from these side flanks. But the beauty of the Omni cannon build synergy is that I do not need to worry about this really slow swivel of the cannons, and I'm not waiting for that kind of crosshair alignment to happen all the time. Instead, I'm using the maneuverability of the Omnis to just keep my target in focus at all times, as well as protecting myself, of course, from the sides. So that bottom cannon there is pretty much totally protected from I'd guess 270 degrees at least, and yeah, I'm able to just keep this guy in my focus without really having to aim. The aim is all on kind of the movement, and that was a bad shot. That should probably have finished him off. But yeah, I think cannons and Omnis are a very good example of where you don't need to read the fine print, you just have to see that these two things work well together. That's going to do it for today though, folks. We're going to have a lot more videos on what works well together over on our channel. There's loads more Crossout stuff and other games too, so check out Flak Cannon Gaming. But until next time, catch you later.